Hey, what's going on folks? My name's Gray, and today it gives me great pleasure to bring to you the story of a two-wheeled franchise that sets gamers' tongues wagging the world over with its high-speed thrills and encouragement of violence to make your way to the top of the illegal street racing scene. Developed by Electronic Arts back when the company still had a sliver of integrity and genuine concern for quality, which sadly for all of us would wane before our very eyes as the franchise progressed. But what's the whole story? Well, let's find out with my Road Rash series review. When one of the first things you say in the development of your motorcycle racing sim is, "I want to make you Suzukis Arcade classic hang-on obsolete," you better bring more to the table than the usual forgettable driving game drivel. And well, what can I say? They did, and then some. It's almost impossible to convey to you today just what an impact this game had when first released on the Sega Mega Drive/Genesis in 1991. Sega were looking to differentiate themselves from the clean-cut, family-friendly Nintendo with a more teen-orientated, cooler aesthetic. Something they had had tremendous success in doing in Europe, where their 8-bit Master System was a big hit, greatly outselling the Tonka distributed NES. Ports would appear for the Amiga, Game Gear and Master System, but very quickly, thoughts would turn to a sequel. And we wouldn't have to wait long, as 1993 opened with the release of one of the most anticipated sequels since Sonic 2. By now Electronic Arts, who prior to Road Rash were known for populace and not much more, were eating high off the hog as one of the industry's leading developers and publishers, having brought to us John Madden and Desert Strike, the latter also appearing first on the Mega Drive. So what's different this time around? Well, wisely, not a lot. The action is more chaotic, the racing smoother, but most importantly, the two-player mode was included. And if you thought the red shell-induced rage of Mario Kart could ruin a friendship, tussles between me and my friends on Road Rash 2 after school would become the stuff of legend in what was and still is one of my all-time favourite 16-bit racing games. I'm almost ashamed to admit this to all of you, but in 1995 I took little to no interest in the release of Road Rash 3 on the Mega Drive. My time was spent drooling over screenshots of Toshinden, Tekken and Virtua Fighter, and saving my pocket money to buy a Sega Saturn. It would be the turn of the century, and on a collecting spree that I would pick it up, and not for the first time, leave my very expensive Saturn and PS1 idle while obsessively playing a previous gen title I'd all but snubbed when released. And while at the time I thought it a strong final entry in the 16-bit lineup and things would only get better, but as we'll see, the series had hit its zenith, and for all the advances in hardware that were to come, Road Rash 3 would prove that gameplay and not graphics were what gamers wanted. despite jumping forward a generation to the 32 bits, in this case the 3DO, as subsequent PS1 and Saturn ports were pretty awful, this high-speed Hellraiser and one of the few genuine top-tier games on Trip Hawkins' underwhelming 3DO system was released a year before the Mega Drive's Road Rash 3 in 1994. And while it's a cracking little white-knuckle racer, the limited amount of tracks on offer and variety in gameplay means that replay value is in short supply. Great game while it lasts though. If the 90s will be remembered for anything in the history of gaming, then chances are high the controversies surrounding violence in video games will be it. And while at the time we laughed at the seemingly impotent furor raised by overprotective mums and grifting politicians and their blithering ignorance of the very industry they were attacking, sadly though the fallout of all this largely manufactured hysteria would be felt for many years to come. And while Road Rash itself was never directly implicated like Mortal Kombat and Night Trap were, 1998's Road Rash 3D just feels so neutered in its execution, as if the developers were trying really hard not to stir anything. Coupled with a weak racing engine, this game never gets off the starting line. As someone quite partial to a bit of N64 racing antics like F-Zero, Mario Kart or Extreme G, I've always wanted to try this polygon protruding pulse pounder, especially as it was pretty well regarded upon initial release. And having spent about 20 boring minutes trying to figure out what the fuss is about, I've come to the conclusion that I was the only sane Nintendo 64 owner, as truth be told, Road Rash 64 is roadkill compared to the roster of races the N64 possessed. And no trends were bucked with the final entrant in the franchise, as Road Rash would circle the drains with Road Rash Jailbreak, a forgettable experience that's not fit to don the leathers of any of its 16-bit forebears. And while EA seemed tight-lipped on the prospect of a new game, we would see in 2017 a spiritual sequel of sorts called Road Redemption that was fun and infuriating in equal measure. But maybe trying to recapture the past glory is exactly the problem. Instead, we should be thankful that we got a trilogy of fantastic titles that actually still hold up today. So whether you're an old school Sega gamer or are just discovering the series, you won't find many better on the 16 bits. So my name's Gray, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, goodbye.